For the next raid, why don't we play off of the success of Arcane?
Yeah!
Spoilers, don't worry. Previously, when I told you about the cities Piltover and Zaun, I showed you that at the very bottom of that place you can find the ruins of an ancient Shuriman city. But that will become just a dungeon. The one that would become an interesting raid would be the Empire of Renada Glass. After I mention this, I know a lot of you will be confused. After all, Renada Glask is just a rich baron from Zaun. How can she support an entire raid?
She has a lot of voice lines that although I've tried playing her a few times, I only really have fun with her in ARAM. I don't feel like anyone I play with really understands the thing where she like juices you up and you have to get a kill in the next 2 seconds, otherwise you'll still die. When I juice them up, they don't really get it. That's because you're bronze. I'm silver. Well, I was. I don't think I am anymore.
Well, in this case, it is all built on 2 factors. First of all, Renada is way too big of a character to be removed in just a dungeon. But more importantly, Renada Glask released this year, and she was released as yet another big villain, after all the other already established villains in Piltover and Zaun. She simply really feels like a setup for something in the future, because after already having Singed and Urgot and Victor as villains in Zaun, Riot didn't need to make up another. It feels obvious they released Renada to be a villain supervising the other bad guys of Zaun. Before her, Zaun didn't really have a main villain. So obviously she is now filling that role. Her lore is making her the main boss of Zaun. Her raid would be very clear in its structure. We would follow the detective case of Caitlyn and Vi as we try to find her hideout. Perhaps Camille, an extremely dangerous assassin from Piltover, would be also interested in killing her. From that point on, we would literally raid her place with the Wardens. As a nice bonus, people would love to see the popular champions Zeri and Echo on our side, both of which are kids from the streets who have destroyed her warehouses before. But the last puzzle piece is, why would we raid Renada? Well, the Glask family owns Glask Industries, which is the most luxurious brand in Piltover and Zaun. They sell perfumes and really fancy limb replacements. And unfortunately, this brand reflects a bit of real life, since these fancy formulas are developed down in Zaun, using slave labor. But there is also a darker twist. All their products are infused with a chemical formula, which can turn their customers into mindless rampaging husks at any moment. It's kinda like Apple. Now, since Renata is a recent champion, that's all her story really.
No, you know what that's like? The SpongeBob SquarePants movie with the chum bucket hats. It's exactly like that.
She is probably the most powerful Baron in Zaun, who can make an entire city fall into chaos with the press of a button. And now we're just waiting to see
like
when
Plankton.
she would unleash it.
Oh my god. They're just copying SpongeBob. That is so unoriginal, guys.
Normally,
Come
I
on.
don't think that this would be a great raid, but this would be very different from raiding dragons, which would actually give it the benefit of changing environment. But also remember, this is riding off of Arcane's fame, and I doubt Riot would pass on that opportunity. That's why I feel confident we will meet Renata in the MMO.
She feels like a setup for the show, right? That's what I thought he was saying, which doesn't necessarily mean she'll be in the MMO, right? So then people could play League and be like, OMG, is that Renata Glask from Arcane?
And now we are diving into the top 3 raids. I am extremely confident that some form of these will be in the MMO. That's for 2 reasons. First of all, these big villains are way too big to be ignored. We are talking about characters in the style of Arthas Menethil, but also their lore turns them into world-threatening
Arthas?
ignored. We are talking about characters in the style of Arthas Menethil.
Like from Heroes of the Storm? Yes, Arthas from Hearts. Yeah. You didn't just say that? Guys, come on. Heroes of the Storm? I wish they would make an MMO based on Heroes of the Storm. How good would that be? You know, you could have like the like it's called WoW. Shut up. No, because WoW doesn't have the Zerg stuff and the Overwatch stuff, and I'm pretty sure it doesn't have the Lost Vikings, like a Blizzard World MMO. Yeah. Great concept. The only thing missing is the players. Fuck you.
But also their lore turns them into world-threatening
enemies. Hang on. Wait, I know who that is. Like Scuffed Zoe, right? LeBlanc.
Have to be dealt with the first of these being Viego, the Ruined King. There is not a sliver of a doubt we will see the Ruined King in the MMO. You can point a gun to my head, tell me to guess a villain in this MMO, and I will smile knowing that I survived. It would be unimaginable to ignore him. Now, the issue lying in front of me right now is that Viego's story is massive. On top of the normal story he has in League of Legends, he got his own book that is 400 pages long, the entire RPG
the book's about him.
Ruined King, which is focusing on his reawakening, and League of Legends got its own in-game event that was focusing on pushing his lore forward, which also included 3 cinematics.
I could change him. I could change him. I could change him. I could change Viego. I could change Kane. I could change Samira. Actually, I don't know if Samira is evil or not. If she wants, if she needs fixing, I can do that. I volunteer.
It's the most lore out of any champion in this universe. So let me summarize it as quickly as possible. Viego was a Camavoran prince who was forced into becoming the king at an early age. Because of this, he was not ready to become a king, and many would not consider him a really good king. Still being a teenager, he often threw tantrums in the style of Kylo Ren. To keep the kingdom from crumbling, he relied on his 2 advisors, Callista and Julio Necrit of Camavor.
Oh,
yes, that's the character
Callista.
Eventually, Viego met...
Oh, it's him! Necrit? Oh my god. He really loves this game.
That's the character named after me. Eventually, Viego met the love of his life, Isolde, a woman whom he loved
that Gwen?
Very, very, very deeply. He loved her so much that he would do anything for her. But she didn't abuse it. Isolde was actually a very good queen. For the majority of Viego's ruling, he waved the kingdom's problems away just so he could be with Isolde. Until the day someone tried to poison Viego to finally remove him from the throne, and instead they poisoned him. This is where Viego's dark side really started to show. After trying absolutely everything imaginable, nobody was able to heal his queen. And Viego's angry depression started taking over him. After weeks of desperate searching, Viego found out that there may exist a hidden place called the Blessed Isles, which held the sacred blessed waters which could heal anything. And so he sent Callista away to find the isles. After a long adventure, Callista succeeded and she confirmed that the blessed waters did indeed exist. So on the next trip, Callista brought the queen and the king and their soldiers with them, so that they could all heal the queen and be happy ever after. But of course, there was a dark twist. The queen died before they arrived on the Isles. And the priests confirmed that they can heal...
Is that actually Gwen? I was joking.
...anything, as long as the person is alive. But that didn't stop Viego from trying.
Oh,
So after the
man.
priests denied him entrance to the waters, Viego massacred everyone who stood in his way, and following a creepy warden called
Viego confronted the inhabitants of the Blessed Isles. They refused to grant him the waters of life all but one, a conniving scholar with a black heart. It's Thresh! Surely there was a bunch of things he could have done, though, right? Not just the Blessed Isles. Could he not have, like, taken her to, like, Darken Land and, like... maybe someone in Zorn could have, like, juiced her up with something. This is before Darken. So this happened ages ago. Damn.
He arrived at the waters and dunked the queen in. For a moment, the waters did resurrect the queen.
Oh my
But then
god.
she was turned into a wraith.
Oh.
Who killed Viego with his own blade, which caused his soul to be absorbed by the blade. I'm skipping a lot of details.
He looks quite
just
happy
know
about
that,
it.
Yes, the blade can absorb souls. We'll actually talk about the blade in the next MMO video, whenever that one comes out. Anyway, after Viego was killed with his own blade, everything exploded in necromantic magic. His queen's soul was shattered into fragments, and the entire place was turned into the Shadow Isles. For 1,000 years, Viego's soul stayed there in the blade. Until the Pirate King Gangplank was told by Thresh that he could totally pick up the blade. His mind was totally strong enough to resist the power of the king. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. And the moment Gangplank picked up the blade, his mind and body was dominated by Viego, who then used that body to fully release himself back into the world. After that, even though everyone's been dead for 1,000 years, Viego still wanted to bring his wife back. And so he started to unleash the undead with the Black Mist all around the world, in an attempt to find all the fragments of his queen's soul. Eventually, he succeeded.
Oh,
He
wow.
actually managed to bring the queen's soul back. But immediately after that, he was defeated by the Sentinels of Light.
Oh.
Remember the undead hunting class from the last video?
Bad timing.
That's them. And not only did they permanently destroy the queen's soul, because the queen didn't actually want to be resurrected, but Viego's entire story arc ended with him being teleported back to his homeland called Kamavor, where he was banished until the present days. You can actually see the end of the storyline in the cinematic called Absolution. And this is why Viego is going to be an incredible boss in the MMO.
That's so
He does
sad.
have a lot of story behind him. But more importantly, this entire time we have only seen his young, reckless personality, where he acts like a child throwing tantrums, as he's constantly trying to help someone he is obsessively in love with. But the thing is, his entire life he was chasing his queen. He was ready to go beyond death just to be with her. But now he was imprisoned after learning that the queen didn't want to be with him, but also after her soul was permanently destroyed. So once Viego is unleashed from his prison again, instead of a cocky teenager, we are going to have a pissed off king who has nothing to lose. And that transformation into the Dark King is something I really wanna see. And you can only imagine what the raid is gonna look like. Hordes of risen Kamavoran soldiers, ancient undead dragons brought from his homeland, the legendary Rasa the Sunderer, and even more legendary Hecarim of the Iron Order. But there is also Commander Ledros,
Cavalier.
or maybe Karthus the Death Bringer, and finally Thresh, the one who caused all of this to happen,
Thresh.
the hidden master of puppets in the shadows. Simply said,
I can fix
Viego
him.
has a lot of meaningful enemies serving him, and the raid will be glorious.
No, what does human
Side
Hecarim
note,
look
in
like?
the distant future, I kinda wanna cover the entire story of Viego.
Where is he going?
Wish me luck. For the next raid, we are not delving too far away from the undead theme.
Most handsome
Because-
boy? Okay. 1 second. Human Hecarim. Wow. I can fix him. Cool.
time to cover the most brutal badass warrior this universe had ever seen.
Oh, wow.
Super quickly, just for clarity. Viego's deathly magic is really undeath in its true meaning. When he's turning his enemies into undead souls, it's more like he is preventing them from dying, and he's turning them into somewhat living wraiths instead. So he's not really the master of death. As you'll see, that title goes to Mordekaiser. His story begins as a warlord known as Sun Uzal. During his time, the main continents were occupied by barbaric tribes. Sun Uzal believed that by killing as many people as possible, he would please the gods of the afterlife. And so, he forged an empire in blood and death. As his life was near the end, he took great satisfaction in knowing that he would sit at the gods' tables, in the glorious halls of bones. However, when he died, he found no glory waiting for him. Instead, Sun Uzal...
He already feels like a raid boss in the... In League. When he like sucks you in and you're in like... He takes you to Brazil? What? And if you're like me and you play supports, that's very scary.
stood in an empty grey wasteland, with an occasional soul drifting by. He watched as these lesser spirits faded into the fog.
Who was it that was so angry when they died? I'm pretty sure that's Mordekaiser, right? They basically refused to die and became a god. Yeah.
Unmade and lost in time. But Sun Uzal refused to fade. His will, tempered by rage and torment, held him together. In other words, he was simply too angry to die. He started listening to the disembodied whispers around him, and he learned this was Oknun, the language of the dead. Slowly, he came up with a plan. He began whispering temptations into the veil between realms, promising power to any who would listen. And sure enough, he managed to tempt a few cultists into bringing him back to life. Lacking any flesh or bone, he told the cultists to bind his spirit to metal plates, forged in the likeliness of his old armor. And so he rose as the Revenant of Iron and Hate. No longer called Sun Uzal, but rather, in Oknun, he was Mordekaiser. Originally, these cultists wanted to use Mordekaiser as a weapon in their trivial wars. But instead, Mordekaiser killed them all, and he used their souls to forge himself a brutal mace called Nightfall. With that, Mordekaiser's second conquest of the world started. But this time, he was wielding necromantic magic. All his enemies were confused because it seemed like Mordekaiser only cared about massacre and destruction. Entire generations perished under his campaign. But in reality, there was far more to Mordekaiser's real plan. At the center of his empire, he...
Who would win? Mordekaiser or Aatrox?
Raised the Immortal Bastion, which became the largest structure on Runeterra. And he used that place to gather information about spirits and death. Be it by capturing and studying demons, or torturing Yordles until he could harvest their secrets. He did everything in his power to understand the realms beyond.
Aatrox
Eventually,
is bigger.
Mordekaiser became such a tyrant, the entire continent banded against him. But when he was ultimately defeated, it was not because of his enemies, but rather he was betrayed from his inner circle. The Immortal Bastion had a secret cabal led by a witch we know as LeBlanc. They managed to separate Mordekaiser's spirit from his armor and seal the empty armor in a hidden place. As a result, without his physical vessel, Mordekaiser was forced out of the physical realm. What none of the cultists knew, however, is that all of this was according to Mordekaiser's plan. The entire time he was forging a destiny greater than the halls of bones. When he finally returned to the empty wasteland of the afterlife, he was met by the hundreds of thousands who died under his reign.
Oh, damn.
Prevented by his dark magic, they would never fade. They would be his eternal army bound to his will. But even the weakest of the spirits were given purpose. Just like he used the souls of the cultists to forge his maze, the weakest of the souls would become the building blocks of his afterworld. And so Mordekaiser became the king of the afterlife. And even though he was cast out, with his physical vessel being banished in the immortal bastion in Noxus, he is already planning on how to return. And once he does so, after so many people were fed into his realm, he would be so powerful nobody would know how to stop him. Since that is where his story cut off, you know that this is a setup for the future. Even in League of Legends, sometimes Mordekaiser is joked about as a raid boss. Once he starts rolling, you need the entire team to get him down.
Yeah.
And Riot would be foolish not to use him as a badass raid boss in the MMO. Especially since we already know some of the other characters that we would see in his raid.
You know who you know who's a raid boss at the moment? Fucking Belveth. What the heck is that about? Belveth easy to counter. I'm in bronze. I thought you were in silver. Shut up.
Conquering the world the second time, he had two demons which he used as his companions. These would be Tybulk, the giant fire demon,
Oh, cool.
and Atakan, an iron-bound shadow demon. To get to him, we would probably have to get past the one who banished him, LeBlanc, and I wouldn't be surprised if we also met Vygar, the Yordle Mordekaiser tormented.
Why is he huge?
Yordle secrets. Finally, we would likely fight alongside Swain, one of the leaders of Noxus, who is actively trying to root out the dark magics from Noxus. So yeah, maybe Mordekaiser's story is not as long as Viego's, but Mordekaiser is built on brutal conquest. His story is simply badass, and you bet that's what people want to fight.
Right, go on, who's next
this
then?
takes us to the last raid I want to show you.
The
Not only
Freljord.
is this raid inevitable, but it is going to be the final raid before Riot starts to get sweaty about their future.
Sweaty about... It's not even made yet! What do you mean sweaty about the... Will it be the bear, do you think? Sorry, I've paused it because I'm trying to work out who he's going to say. Volibear? Lysandra? Maybe? I'm thinking of the, in the TFT set, the Legends TFT set was Volibear, Ornn, and Anivia. The gods are Volibear, Ornn, and Anivia. Sejuani, Ashe, and Lysandra are the three queens. Oh, okay. I think he's gonna say Lysandra.
Because from that point on, they would be forced into making up new enemies. And that's usually when the lore of MMOs crumbles. With the ultimate endgame in Runeterra being the battle against the end of everything, the Watchers of the Void. Now, I know we already quickly summarized the story of the Watchers when we talked about the world.
Yeah.
But we need to quickly do it again because if they get their own raid, it would be a really cool merging of multiple storylines of this universe. Basically, at the beginning of everything, there was nothing. Just dark, empty void. Until there was a spark of light. This spark of light illuminated...
Why has he... Sorry, maybe he will later, but why has he not mentioned any of the, like, purple alien things? The void.
...the darkness and revealed creepy entities we know as the Watchers, who, before this event, didn't even know about their own existence. Of course, since this first light woke the Watchers up for the first time since the beginning of time, the Watchers got annoyed and they decided to silence it so they could sleep again. As they drifted closer,
like an alarm.
This spark was indeed our reality.
Snooze.
So to get rid of the light, the Watchers tried to poke it and taint it. But they were always too big to get through and deal with it themselves. So instead, they reached into reality, stole something, corrupted it, and released it back.
Oh.
In hopes that it would destroy the rest of the reality. But even that wasn't too successful. Eventually, the Watchers started whispering into the light. And the Ice Witch known as Lysandra answered. The Watchers promised her people immortality and great power. In exchange, they asked Lysandra to prepare her world for the coming of the Void. In secret, behind the backs of her two sisters, she agreed. The Watchers empowered the strongest of their followers and turned them into the Iceborn. And soon enough, the Watchers broke into reality in the Freljord. With it, Lysandra's allegiance with the Watchers was undeniable.
Wait a second. We're in ARAM, I swear, one of the shopkeepers talks about the Watchers. Right? I have no idea what he says because it just goes right over me every single time. I never actually listen to him. Does anyone know what he says? This will be the greatest battle of your life, lest the Watchers return.
As the Watchers rose for the first time, Lysandra got to see how horrifying they were. And she realized they came here to destroy everything. In desperation, Lysandra sacrificed her sisters and the Iceborn to use their magic to freeze the Watchers beneath the ice. But even that magic wasn't enough. Beneath the ice, the Watchers were only sleeping. They would break out should they try to wake up. So these days, Lysandra is kidnapping the surviving Iceborn. She freezes them in her fortress. She is then using their inherent powers to reinforce the ice. And she is feeding their dreams to the Watchers to keep them asleep. As a bonus, Lysandra is killing anyone who remembers the old days, and who could spill out that she actually kinda betrayed all humanity. See, this setup on its own is enough to support a raid. Let's say we raid the Frostguard Citadel, which is where Lysandra is keeping the Watchers frozen. First, we get there by crossing the Howling Abyss. This is the bridge that is incredibly iconic for League of Legends players. This is where you play ARAM. I bet you never noticed that at the end of the bridge, you can actually see the entrance to the Frostguard Citadel. And in fact, the ghastly shopkeeper is one of the soldiers who remembers the coming of the Watchers.
Yes!
After getting inside, we would fight Lysandra's frozen Thralls. These are trolls that Lysandra twisted herself to serve her. But they are also supported by the Harbinger of Thralls, whatever that is. Then we would fight through Lysandra's army of the Draklorn. These warriors dedicated their lives to Lysandra, knowing that they are protecting the world from the end of everything. Next, we would face the most mysterious creatures of the Freljord. We don't really know what they looked like in their pure form. We only know what they look like after they were corrupted by the Watchers. And these would be the creatures with their very interesting names. There is She Who Wanders, They Who Endure, and It That Stares. Whatever these creatures used to be, now they are titanic, with their
Its name is It?
I-beam disintegrating reality. Then of course we would have to get past Lysandra herself before we arrive at the Frozen Watcher. I think it's likely that we are going to fight one of these. And what's cool is that even though this is the toughest enemy this universe has to offer, even if we defeat it, we don't really defeat all the Watchers. That's the clever backdoor of this universe. We can't destroy them all. They are the primal force, there is an endless sea of them. If anything, our reality is a parasite in their void. So if we defeat a Frozen Watcher, all we really do is plug a hole. But the Watchers continue being a threat.
What
Anyway,
a great
this
idea for a
Watcher
raid.
looks
Keep doing it and it
strange,
makes
doesn't
sense in the lore.
It's not really the floating eye that you would imagine. Well, that's because, as it is with all the League of Legends stories, there is a twist. You see, just as the Watchers are able to corrupt a being, they are also open to being corrupted themselves. The process always comes from both sides. And so, the more the Watchers interact with humans, for example, the more human-like they become themselves. And since the Watchers in the Freljord were frozen there for thousands of years, Legends of Runeterra shows us that once they would break through, that's what they would look like. They would have many human-like limbs. The story told us they have fur from all the animals, and they even have a creepy fake face. So no, this is not what a pure Watcher would look like. This is a Watcher tainted by the people of the Freljord. Also, you might be wondering, how do we actually beat the most powerful being in this universe? Well, That's where the stories collide. First of all, Lysandra would be the key to freezing the Watchers. She would have to be on our side at the end there. Also, the primal god Ornn constructed the bridge leading to the Citadel. And this bridge was used as a magical seal to help keep the Watchers down there.
So Ornn made the bridge that you play ARAM on?
So Ornn himself would help us. But most importantly, there is another massive storyline that is in Shurima, centered around a Voidborn known as Bel'Veth. Because this video is already way too long, just super quickly. You know how the Watchers themselves
champion
interacting with reality? Down in Shurima, a small pocket dimension formed between the Void and our reality.
There we
It
go.
was sort of like a cancer growth on the Void. In fact, if you dive deeper into this, you may realize that this is directly correlating to real-life cancer. If you don't know, cancer is just living tissue that decided, hey, I don't want to die. And that's exactly what happened here. As the Void started consuming people in Shurima, it got tainted by the people and it formed self-awareness. Soon, because this cancerous growth inside the Void needed to represent itself, it grew a creature known as Bel'Veth. A Voidborn that looks a bit fishy because she consumed a harbor, but also she doesn't actually like the Watchers because the Watchers want to end everything. And all Bel'Veth wants to do is to live. And so these days, Bel'Veth is consuming entire cities at a time. And she is rebuilding everything with the information she got. With her ultimate end goal being to rebuild all reality. So that she could be reality and she would be strong enough to fight the Watchers. Of course, at this time, she doesn't really have all the information gathered. So whenever she's recrafting cities and people, it all looks uncanny. However, at this point, she consumed hundreds of thousands of people. And she's using all of their brain power, so Bel'Veth is very smart. Now, the reason why this storyline is important is because Bel'Veth once talked to Kai'Sa, and she offered her a deal. If mortals help Bel'Veth consume reality faster, she would spare them to be the last she would consume. Bel'Veth said that she did the calculations and she knows that humanity could never beat her. But at least, with this deal, she gave them the chance to create a weapon or maybe find a hero who maybe could slay her. She knows they could never achieve it, but she is willing to give them the chance. And you see, this is where we can get another twist. This wasn't confirmed, this is purely my theory, but I believe that there is a way to destroy Bel'Veth. See, Bel'Veth believes that we can't beat her, but the fact is, she used hundreds of thousands of human brains to figure it out. But the humans can't even comprehend the power of the Celestials. So I believe Aurelian Soul could destroy her. She just doesn't have the brain power to figure that out herself. So what I think is going to happen is that at some point we are going to beat Bel'Veth. She realizes she was wrong, she realizes that humanity is stronger than her when fighting the Watchers, and she decides to help us destroy them. So should we ever get a raid on the Frostguard Citadel, I wouldn't be surprised if before that we got another raid where we delve into Bel'Veth's little pocket dimension, and with her help we move to the north. Or, you know, we just destroy her, that would be way cooler. So all of that is still just a wild theory. The fact is, we are fighting the Watchers. That is inevitable. And that was all the raids I wanted to show you. All of them are supported by the lore, and it is up to Riot whether they want to do them or not. Except the last 3 raids. Those are happening, there is no way around it. But because people are going to freak out, let me give you some honorable mentions.
Okay.
This universe also technically has the Grim Reaper.
Kindred.
While they may have many forms, the most well-known form of death itself is Kindred. We wouldn't really have a good reason to fight them though, since death isn't really an evil entity in this universe, but, you know, they exist. I would also love to fight against Vladimir's Hemomancers. We could also get a raid on the Ursine with Volibear being the primal god of wilderness. In the east, there is also the mysterious demon known as Ashlash, a 7-handed liquid demon that is locked beneath the earth, in a place known as the 7th layer. Neela is currently wielding its power, and it looks like a setup for the future. Also, there is Fiddlesticks, the primal and most powerful demon on Runeterra.
What?
Fiddlesticks itself is just a puppet. The demon is what you can see inside the cage. But because Fiddlesticks is roaming around the world, I couldn't really figure out a raid setting. But you bet we are fighting him at some point. If you want a creepy video to react to, find Fiddlesticks cinematic. Simply said, the lore
Dude, I
supports-
watched the Fiddlesticks cinematic, the like most recent Fiddlestick. That is great, but like in some of the earlier cinematics, Fiddlesticks was not very scary.
so much more than what I showed you today. And in the future,
was
I
kinda
can make a
goofy.
smaller video where I cover the new dungeons of this MMO. All being
My
theoretical,
queen.
of course. But for now, that's it. I'm running out of content, so let's see, what do we have next?
Oh,
But hey, my question: why do you hold the lav mic?
Wait, what do you...
oh my god, he put S-Band in it. That's so funny. Oh man. Another excellent video from Necrit. Thank you, Necrit, for making amazing content about a game that doesn't even exist and we don't know anything about it.